dowel, pedestal. If it's wobbly, you put a piece of tape, and then just like one layer of tape, because if you put too much, then it won't fit in the hole, and it kind of defeats the purpose of the whole idea is that you want this to not wobble too much, okay? So then a bucket of water and a pretty large stack of newspaper to start with, okay? And then you want about, I'm gonna say, so this is a brand new bag of clay, and about half of it, or maybe two-thirds of it, has already been used. So I'm gonna say you need about 2 to 2.5 inches from the top. This is gonna be about 5 pounds of clay. You're gonna cut that in half. So that now you have 2.5, 2.5, and then you're gonna get one more. So about 7.5 pounds, thereabouts. Doesn't have to be perfect, okay? So 3 pieces that are about 2 to 2.5 pounds each. Okay, so that's what you're starting with, okay? And then wads of paper. You do want to cover your board with plastic, and I have plastic over here in this box already, but you could cut out a little rectangle from one of the plastic bags over there, and then you just puncture that over the stick so that your sculpture doesn't stick to the board underneath it, okay? Then you want to take your sections of newspaper, open them up, and I like to make a pretty good stack of open newspaper, okay? If you have any half sheets in here, you want to get rid of them. Half sheets are no good, okay? So we're just going to make a stack of these so that you can have access to them quickly without having to kind of interrupt yourself in the midst of doing this. So I'm going to do like maybe one more stack here. Almost there. Okay, so what I'm going to teach you is a process that I kind of discovered through experimentation, and that is you want to be able to remove the newspaper from the bottom of your sculpture fairly easily. And this is ideally what we're shooting for, okay? Can you see it? You good? Okay, and so you can see that it's kind of flat. That's kind of what a humanoid would be, is flat, and then kind of rounded on the sides where the arms would be. And the back of the head comes out pretty good. The front has a chin that pops out pretty good. And then it's kind of a basic foundation. This underneath piece that you can see is fairly large opening in there so that when you start to pull this newspaper out, it pulls out all in one fell swoop, okay? So the interlocking system that I'm about to teach you is going to help you with that. Okay, no half sheets. How nice is that? Okay, so you want to take probably 2 to 3 sheets at a time and roll them up into a coil of newspaper. So I start from the corner because it makes a longer coil diagonally than it does straight up and down. Okay, so you want to make as long a coil as you can out of this. And then I'm just going to go ahead and wad that up and put it in the newspaper and let it start to soak. I'm going to do this about 3 or 4 times. So there's another 4 sheets. Start to roll into a coil. Roll and stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4. You guys can see that. So you're just letting that stuff soak in the water, so it's starting to collect water as it needs it. Perfect. 3 or 4. Good. Okay. Is this a half sheet? Nope. So what is that? 3 or 4 now? 3. That was 3? Maybe 3 or 4, something like that. Okay. 4. And then we'll do like 5. You might not use all of them, but And those are all absorbing water in the bucket. Okay, so then before we start to use the newspaper, we're going to start to create our pinch pots. And if you guys want to go larger scale than what I've got here, we could go larger scale. Okay, you just got to upscale everything that I'm talking about. So I could get you a piece of PVC, and hey Harrison, would you mind? Yeah. I think over there in the corner is the one that we used for your hand. Oh no, you guys are using it. Never mind. Yeah. Never mind. You want this? No, I was just going to show them that setup that you have there with the legs and the PVC coming out. That's fine. Put it back on. You're cool. You're good. So basically the system that they got over there, it's essentially the same thing, only this piece of PVC coming out instead of the tube, instead of the dowel. So I took a third of that piece of clay and I'm just pounding it into a ball. And because this is new clay, I do not have to wedge it. It is de-aired when it comes to us, okay? The only reason why I would want to wedge this is like I was wheel throwing. I want it to be pretty even in consistency, and it tends to be a little kind of drier on the outside than on the inside because clay is not as airtight as we'd like it to be. Plastic is not as airtight as we'd like it to be. Okay, so we have 2, and we might wind up cutting one of these in half. We'll see. So, first thing we're going to do is grab one of these coins. And we are still taping? Yeah, making sure. You see like a little red light? No? Yeah. But it says record? Okay, cool. Okay, so we start at the center, and you kind of spiral around. And then as I'm doing this, I'm kind of pinching it to kind of make it flat so that, you know, a human is flat, so to speak, to start out with. Then you add other elements that you need to add. So that's about there. Then I take my second one, squeeze out as much water as I can, and then when I put this on here, I don't just start to wrap it around, but I actually twist the ends around each other a couple times so that when I do wind up trying to pull this out later on, they're like tied together. And so I just continue where I left off and continue to wrap, building up kind of the shoulders that I want. And then I'm going to allow this to kind of go over the top of the dowel so I can tie into it with the next piece. But now I'm going to go ahead and grab my pre-flattened wad of clay, and I'm going to start to create a pinch pot out of this. And it does not have to be beautiful by any means. You're just trying to put a piece of clay over the top of that newspaper, and you want it to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches thick, the clay. And then you will stab your thumb through the top and open it up so that it is basically now a cylinder of clay, not just a pinch pot. I opened up the bottom, okay? So it's a pinch pot that has an opening to it, okay? Then I'm going to take and kind of stretch it open a little bit and get it to be kind of more flat. It's not round like it was, kind of flattening it. And I put this over the top of the mound of newspaper that I had. And that becomes the shoulders, okay? Then I'm going to take, I don't know, maybe 1/3 of this, and I'm going to make this into a coil. So I'm squeezing it with my hands, and then I'm going to roll this out on the table. And when you're rolling a coil, what's tricky is getting it to be consistently the same round. So at first I'm kind of crushing it and making it so that it's no longer flat. I'm starting to make it circular. And then if it does start to flatten a little bit, you have to lift it up on its sides and roll out the flatness so that you get a nice round coil, okay? Then This clay is brand new. It's really wet. I do not have to worry about scoring and slipping, but you could just use a little bit of water. Put it on there, and then you're going to start to build the neck up, okay? So I'm taking one coil, and instead of going right into the next level, I go ahead and cut this right here so that I make one level layer of coil, okay? And I'm gonna do at least 2 coils, okay? So that was 1. And so that coil's, I don't know, definitely thicker than my thumb. Pretty thick, okay? Again, just dip your hand in the water, get it wet, and stagger the seam so that it's not right over the other seam that you had. Turn this and cut. And I actually like to cut over the top of the last one so that I can make the seam there pretty perfect, okay? So now, if you're to look at this from the top, you can see that I have 2 stacked coils, an empty space in there that's pretty wide, and you can see the newspaper down in there. Can everybody see that? Okay. So now I'm going to tie in another newspaper. So wring out the water. Okay. Tie this into the old one that I had there before, and then start to wrap around the inside. Okay. And then I'm just going to put the top right over the top just like that for now. And I'm going to cut this other, so this was another third of the pieces that I had, about 2.5 pounds, okay? So I'm going to cut this into 1/3 and 2/3. So I just cut off about 1/3 with using my fettling knife. I'm going to turn this into a pinch pot again. Pinching with my thumbs, opening it up. And again, I'm going to rip through the bottom, open it up. And that way it looks like that. Kind of has a hole in it. There's a little bit of clay on my finger that I'm just going to put on there. And then you're going to widen this as much as you need to get it over the newspaper. Push it down. Open it up a little bit here. Kind of make the head a little bit wider. Then I'm going to take one last piece of newspaper. So that was 4 total, right? 4 papers. So for this size, you want 4. Okay. Squeeze out the water. So this wet newspaper on the inside is going to keep your sculpture soft for a while, okay, until you're ready to start to stiffen it up and harden it. So I make sure that I twist both ends, not just one end. And then it's like you're loading a washer, right? With clothes, you put all your clothes around the center of the wash machine. And then you want to make sure that you put a lot of the excess newspaper over the top of that dowel so that it doesn't puncture through the top of your head. Okay, it's a bummer. You're making this sculpture, and then so then with this last third, I'm just going to make a shallow pinch pot because it doesn't need to be very deep. And essentially, so I'm going to take a couple of these, and I'll probably wind up putting them on top later, but I'm just going to put this here. I'm going to squeeze the clay until the two kind of match up. And then just like when we did the egg sculpture, you want to take this seam and zip it with your fingers. You don't have to really exaggerate it, but you want to pinch the seams together, okay, all the way around. And my newspaper was sticking out there, so I'm going to push it in and make sure that it's not in the middle of the seam. Okay. Then after you've pinched it together and it's staying together, you come back and you smear it. And then, let's see, Joey, would you please get me one of the metal ribs that does not have a serrated edge, just this kind of a flexi guy. And there's a rib drawer over there. So now I'm just smearing the seam with my fingers. And I like to smear up, but whatever. Doesn't matter, you can go at an angle, whatever. Okay? And I'm just kind of smearing that seam, trying to get rid of that zipped up seam that we had. Thank you, sir. It's perfect. It's exactly what I was looking for. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the neck. I'm just going to smear it down, smear the top egg or pinch pot that we had into that neck. So I'm smearing up and down on the neck coils to get rid of the seams that were there. Okay. And then I have a packet that I have uploaded for you guys already. And if I haven't already given you our Google Classroom code, I will do that because I have set up a classroom for you guys. And that way you can access the handouts that I want to give you. There's like 18 or 20 handouts per this packet. So that would be like an exuberant amount of printouts. So I'm not going to print them out. You guys can use your devices to look at the packet if you want. Okay, so I've got this generally the way I want. Then, after I've got it smeared and smoothed out fairly decent, I come back with a metal rib and I'm going to really start to refine the shape with this, smearing the clay so that it's starting to look a lot better than all my fingerprints that I had. I'm just kind of dragging some clay up with it as I'm smearing too. And if you notice that you can kind of see the newspaper at any given spot, you can build coils up. I'm obviously going to need to build those shoulders up a little bit more. I'm going to need to squeeze in the neck a little bit. So I'm doing that. And then there are these paddles, okay? Some of them have a curve to them, and some of them are flat. You want to take out any aggression on your sculpture. This is therapy. Okay, so that teacher that just, totally upset you earlier, okay, Johnny O. Start taking it out on the sculpture, right? Instead of on the teacher. So you're just kind of gently tapping it, making sure that you're getting rid of any of those weird growths and stuff that were made from sculpting and stuff. Okay? And then I'm going to decide which is the front and which is the back, and I'm going to make sure that I paddle it fairly flat on those two sides, and then I'm kind of tapping down here for the shoulders, tapping down here for this shoulder, and the same thing on this side. I'm going to really start to kind of tap in where the neck is, using the side of the paddle now. And then I'm going to start to decide where is the chin and where is the back of the head. And so I have two coils here already. I'm going to go ahead and add some clay here and add some more right there and start to smear up. But it's starting to really accentuate the chin. You want it to kind of stick and protrude out because the chin has basically an overhang feel to it. So then after you've smeared it, you can come back and tap. And you want to look at this thing from many angles and really try to get things to have a relationship, how they flow to each other, okay, around. And if you look at somebody from the top, from the sides, and three-quarter view and profile view, you can see that there is a relationship as to how things flow to each other. And then Same thing on the back. So we had the chin. The chin was a little bit lower on this side. So about 2/3, maybe a third of the way up, a third of the way up is where I'm going to start to add the back of the head and get that to kind of get accentuated. And smear both up and down. Push, mold, and then tap. So you just really gotta push this clay around until it takes on the shape that you want it to take, okay? So this is armature and basic foundation for bust sculpture. And then now you can start to add clay and create your reference line. So you have a line that goes down the middle, a line that goes across the middle horizontally, and then you can start to do like eye sockets right on those, starting to press in. If it's going to be humanoid. So you get to decide. And then if you wanted to open this up and make it so that it has an open head, you can do that. You can do whatever you want. This is a monster, this is an alien, whatever your plan is, okay? So that is constructing an armature and a basic foundation for a bust sculpture, okay? And I did not use all 7.5 pounds, so probably more like 6.5, 6.5 pounds, something like that. And then I can add more as I need it, okay? Good? Okay, that's what we're doing. Then we're getting started on the craziness of it all, right? Okay?